This week on Inside the Skev, we speak with Mitch Kahn, who is the founder and former CEO of Grassroots Cannabis and the CEO of Greenhouse Skokie, which is a cannabis dispensary located at Old Orchard Road and Skokie Boulevard in Skokie. Just opened up. Really cool architecture. Very interesting business to open up inside the Skev, and we're going to talk about all that, and it's going to be really interesting. Hope you all enjoy, and just a reminder, this is a really cool community, and if you are ever looking to join the community by buying a home here in Skokie or Evanston or beyond, I can help you. I am a real estate agent over at Dreamtown Realty in Evanston, so reach out and enjoy the show. Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today, I am really happy to be joined by Mitch Kahn, who is the founder and former CEO of Grassroots Cannabis, and now he is a board member at Curaleaf, which is a large marijuana company in the United States. And he is also the CEO of Greenhouse Skokie, which is a dispensary that just opened up at the corner of Old Orchard Road and Skokie Boulevard. It's got some really cool architecture. If you've driven by, I'm sure you've seen it and asked what is going on there. So as soon as I saw that, I said, I've got to get that story. And Mitch, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Grown up in Skokie, I live here. I actually worked for the village as an intern in their planning department when I was in college, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that there'd be a dispensary here in Skokie, let alone so prominently. Is that something, you're in the real estate business and you're obviously very much so in the marijuana business now. Did you ever think of having a location here? Is this something that you dreamed of as a young man?
Certainly never dreamed of this. Frankly, never dreamed in a million years I'd be in the cannabis business, period. So certainly didn't dream of that. I think as we got into the business, did I have a belief and dreams that we would be able to operate in great retail locations, visible to the world rather than in hidden industrial locations like we had to when we started, where nobody would see us and we could hide in the back and we wouldn't offend anybody. Yeah, I certainly did. For the last 7 years, I certainly dreamed that we'd be able to do that. But, to answer your main question, never in a million years thought I'd be in the cannabis business, let alone what corners we would operate from.
Yeah. It's amazing how much the public perception has changed in the past several years. What do you think made that difference?
Look, I think, you're talking about really deep philosophical questions about how society changes its views. You've seen over the last generation or two or three how social mores have changed and how the speed of that has changed over the last numbers of decades. And I think this just continued that process. And I think that as we have moved toward a world that is focused on health and wellness and a lot of plant-based advocates out there in the food world and other places, I think that has certainly helped the cannabis business and the plant become much more accepted. The other reality, Aaron, is that economics certainly does play a role in it as well. And I think that many governments see the opportunity to legalize it, professionalize it, tax it, generate revenue, and frankly, eliminate the black markets in places that are producing things that are bad for people.
Right. You know what you're getting when you buy it. I mean, it's so different than, you think about the back alley, going to the drug dealer type of thing, which is completely different than when you walk into Greenhouse. I went when you had the grand opening, got a tour, got to meet you in person. It's a beautiful, beautiful space. It's like going into an Apple store in a way, but for marijuana. Just the design element to it, it takes away that kind of stigma in a way from when you step into it. And you talk about how you used to have to be tucked away into the back of industrial areas. And now you're here at this prominent corner with this type of architecture. Who came up with that concept of really, making it so beautiful out there and proud to be what it is?
Even when the only places we could do business 6 years ago in Illinois were in industrial locations, we were still pretty proud of what we built. And I think built a very inviting experience in the dispensary inside. But one of the things we set out to do when we designed this building, and I obviously have to give the architects a tremendous amount of the credit for this, the direction to them was to make this prominent, exciting, inviting, and to celebrate what we're doing, but to do it in a way that it feels like any other retail business to a degree from the outside and inside. And I think we've been very successful doing that in this new design. And I think that obviously if you drive by that building, it's amazingly prominent. You've seen it during the day. I would suggest drive by it at night. At night, it is absolutely spectacular, better than we could have hoped, frankly, as the designers kind of started their process. It highlights for us the fact that, in our view, this is just another consumer product. It's a new category. It's a new business. And we're serving and helping customers across a wide variety of interests, needs, and desires. And it helps people in a lot of different ways.
Oh, it absolutely does. In regards to the architecture and it being the old bank building, my brother worked there probably over 20 years ago when it was LaSalle Bank. And it's so amazing to see just that transformation of what you can do with a piece of real estate where it was vacant for a little while. You don't know what it's going to be. I mean, you're somebody who's been in the business, you have your own real estate company, and it's amazing how you can rejuvenate property. And I think that it brings prominence to this area. Of course, you're across the street from Old Orchard Mall, but it helps, revitalize with that type of design. Was Skokie very supportive of you opening up here?
Extremely supportive. And look, one of the things that we have focused on throughout Illinois and throughout the country is we've really only gone to communities that are supportive. This has been a challenging business in many ways, right? There's plenty of communities that don't want this in their community. And I think that's changing. The number of communities that didn't want it 5 years ago, but are happy with it and excited about it today, Skokie being one of them. I think, and I don't know this exactly, but I think in the original licenses 5-6 years ago, Skokie was not interested at that point in having this in their community, let alone in a prominent retail location. But I can tell you that they embraced this from the outset. We worked very closely with our landlord and with the village, and Skokie couldn't have been better to deal with, couldn't have been more cooperative, and I think couldn't be more excited about having this as one of the pillars of the community. And, obviously in a prominent spot right across the street from Old Orchard.
They were there for the grand opening and, really supporting you through the process. And I've gone to some of the Economic Development Commission meetings, and people there were very excited to see this happen. And there's a lot of money involved. It helps the community and it helps serve a purpose. And we touched on that it's grown in the past, few years. And now you're part of Curaleaf. Tell us a little bit about what Curaleaf is if people aren't familiar with the marijuana industry, and, what that gives you in terms of new potential and possibilities within this industry.
What Curaleaf was before we did the deal was the largest public operator in the space. Subsequent to the deal, they are head and shoulders the largest operator in the space nationally. By acquiring Grassroots, which they did, merging, if you will, they've become by far the largest player in the space in the U.S. and really in the world. Why does that matter? The personal side for our investors, it provides a great path to liquidity for our investors. But more importantly, it provides a larger platform to take best practices from what we were doing at Grassroots, what they were doing at Curaleaf, and get the ultimate best practice across lots of different issues in the business. It provides the best platform. We loved the Curaleaf platform because we believe that they were by far the leader from a capital markets perspective in the space. And at the end of the day, making sure we have good access to capital is going to be critical in this business to gain the availability that you need. Capital is going to be very, very necessary, has been to date and will continue to be very necessary as these businesses build. These businesses are very capital intensive businesses, particularly in an environment where debt is not really available in the space. So almost everything has been done with equity. There's beginning to be some debt deals. Curaleaf does have a debt facility, but there's probably 3 or 4 guys with real debt in the space, and they're one of them. So I think that it just provides scale. And at the end of the day, I am very, very strongly of the belief that scale is going to matter a tremendous amount in this space, and it's going to matter very, very quickly.
I want to take a minute here to pause and just remind everybody here that if you are looking to join this great community in Skokie or Evanston or beyond, I can certainly help you with finding your home. I am a real estate agent at Dreamtown Realty in Evanston. You can always find more information about me at skevinson.com. Also, there is opportunity here in this space within this show. If you have a business that you'd like to advertise to this great hyperlocal and loyal audience that loves Inside the Skev, reach out to me at aaron@skevinson.com. Always happy to get some more people participating here. Let's get back to the show. If cannabis becomes legal on a federal basis and it opens up for the possibility of banking, because one thing is you can't use a credit card when you purchase cannabis right now because of banking regulations. But if that were to change, it would probably open up more liquidity for business operations and for people just to be able to make purchases, right?
Yeah, no question about that. And, we are finally, over the last short period of time, we are able to offer some debit card-like solutions in the dispensaries, which has been helpful for our customers for sure. But you are correct. There are no credit cards legally anywhere in the industry. There is no debt. Banks aren't really financing these businesses. These businesses have been built purely with all equity. We don't even need this to be federally legal. The federal government has toyed with a bill that's been called a bunch of different things over a bunch of different iterations, but it's effectively a cannabis banking bill, which would specifically provide that cannabis banking is fine for the banks to do. That would begin to change the face of the industry, not because of the banking itself, but because we all do have banks. Most of us have banks in most states. But what it would do is if they do it the right way, it would allow for debit and credit cards to be done like normal businesses. It would theoretically allow for the smaller and community banks, because I don't think the big banks do this for a while, but it will allow them to begin to lend into the business. So you could have real estate loans and other operating loans that would begin to build some level of debt into the businesses, which is healthy and good for the businesses. So I think it would do a lot of different things that would make the business a much, much more efficient, much more effective business.
Absolutely. It would open it up to more entrepreneurs who want to be in this business, because most businesses have to take on debt in order to make things work. Any type of business, a restaurant, a store. When you're doing real estate development, you always take on debt in order to be able to build those projects. So I hope that changes to make it easier. Now, to talk about a little bit about what is sold in the store, I think that for people who have used cannabis over the years, they're more familiar with it, but going into a store is a different experience. But for people who've never actually tried it because it's been stigmatized or illegal, what is the experience like going into Greenhouse, and how do you get those questions answered so you know what you're doing?
Well, one of the things we have always been focused on at Greenhouse from when we opened our first dispensary in Deerfield 5+ years ago was education, and to make sure that our staff, that has always been known in our facilities as patient counselors when it was a pure medical business, and now, but that same theory flows through to these like Skokie, which is an adult use building. We've been very focused on building that mentality of education in our team. So our teams are, the folks who help you on the floor and behind the counter are all incredibly well educated about the product. And their main job is to help people understand what the alternatives are, what the different strains can be used for, what they each do, because it can be overwhelming, the number of choices people have in terms of the number of strains of flower, the number of different ways to ingest the product, whether it be inhaling it like all of us think about what marijuana looks like from the old days, the flower, if you will, to vape pens that are similar but not the same at all as that, to edibles, to topicals. There's a host of different products, and they're each designed for very specific things and very specific use cases. And our folks are really, really well trained, both at understanding cannabis knowledge and the product, but also just regular, good old-fashioned, great retail customer service. That's been an evolution over the last 4 or 5 years for sure.
I'm sure you didn't expect to open this up in the middle of a pandemic. How do you help people who are, apprehensive to go into the store? How do you make things efficient where people can feel comfortable within that type of environment?
There's a few answers to that question. So part of this is a regulatory issue for the state of Illinois. So the state of Illinois has permitted us to, for medical stores, for medical patients, to do curbside delivery, but only for medical patients and only in stores that are dispensaries that are medical licensed dispensaries. So for example, our Deerfield facility, which is the closest one to Skokie that we're talking about, if you're a medical patient there, you can pre-order the product, you can come, stay in your car, and there's a very simple process where you literally never have to leave your vehicle. Unfortunately, the way the regulations work in the state of Illinois for the adult use consumers and the adult use licensed buildings like Skokie, we cannot offer curbside delivery. Again, that's a state regulatory issue, not a greenhouse issue. But what we have instituted, we've put in place a really dynamic pre-order process. So you can pre-order. You can also use the debit card-like solution that we have called CanPay. You can sign up. It hooks right to your bank account. So you can literally go through the entire process online, pre-order. You can use CanPay, which means you don't actually have to spend much time in the dispensary. And you can come into the dispensary in Skokie having pre-ordered and be in and out in probably less than 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. We have found it to be a very, very effective tool. In addition to that, we obviously are doing all of the things that good, smart businesses ought to be doing. We mandate, obviously, masks for all of our employees at all times. We mandate masks for all of our customers at all times inside the building. We do a thorough cleaning process on a regular basis of any surfaces that anybody touches. We limit the number of people in the buildings. We're doing all the right things we had to do from a COVID perspective. That's kind of the answer. If you are a medical patient and you have a medical card, you can't come to the Skokie dispensary and buy as a medical patient anyway. So, you should be coming to Deerfield, and you can do that all pre-ordered, never leave your vehicle. If you aren't a medical patient, I think the Skokie experience is terrific. And I think, most folks that I know have begun to slowly get comfortable being in grocery stores, pharmacies. This is a similar experience. Again, we take a lot of time and attention to make sure it's a safe space for people. I think the experience has been very good.
When I was there, I saw you had the pumps for hand sanitizer. Everybody was masked. There's a place where people go for pre-orders, so it's easy and you could get out. But if you are there, what I learned is that your associates will come and help and educate, like you were talking about. And then you make the orders on these tablets. So you can pick anything that you want and you have beautiful displays. If somebody was trying it for the first time and, what do you think that they should try? An edible, or would you go for the vape pen or flower?
So the one thing to be clear, Aaron, is you don't want to probably take advice from me on what the best products are to use and what the best delivery methods are to use them. But, we have great experts in the building. A number of years ago, I would have for sure said to you, an edible is the last thing you want to use if you're a new consumer, because a number of years ago, the producers making them weren't doing them in a consistent enough way. That's pretty much done. I think the products being produced today in Illinois and in most legal markets are really well done, really done consistently. It very much depends on your personal wants, needs, desires, what you're using the product for. Even for non-medical consumers, many, if not most of our customers are using it to address certain, what I will call medical needs, wellness needs, if you will. For example, if you use one of our products that we sell to help yourself go to sleep at night, the state doesn't consider that a medical use sufficient to get you a card. From my perspective, that's absolutely a medical need. One of our first patients in our first dispensary that we opened, he came into the building. He has a job that is particularly stressful, said that he had a particular condition that allowed him to get a card, but he really didn't use it because of that condition. He used it because it helped him deal with his stressful life. And he would come home from his stressful job, and he said he and his wife would just fight automatically. And if he came home and he used cannabis, went upstairs, took a couple puffs, he would come back down and he would listen to his wife better. He would have a much better conversation with him, and they would communicate in a much more effective way. For my money, that's a medical use. That is absolutely something that is medical or wellness for sure for people. And whether it is to help you sleep, whether it's to help you communicate with your significant other better, whether it's to enjoy a concert better, whether it's to be more creative, whether it's to deal with, unfortunately, cancer and those kinds of things, whether it's to enhance your sex with your partner, whatever it might be, all of those things to me are things that absolutely are medical or wellness and absolutely can be helped by cannabis without question.
We have an opioid crisis in this country, and pharmaceutical crisis with where people feel like it's okay to take a pill, but those pills can really have some horrible detrimental effects on people. And yet marijuana has this stigma, but it's much safer, it's effective, and it doesn't lead to the addiction problems that these other types of opioids may cause. And athletes admit to using, and it helps to relieve some of the pain that they have from playing football or whatever it may be. And it is a medical use. I know in Illinois, you have to have a very bad condition in order to get a card, but it really can truly help a lot of people. I know that Jim Belushi has a branded Blues Brothers marijuana that's being marketed at Greenhouse. And, he was talking about in an interview with WGN about how it helps with PTSD. That's similar to many people who use it for that type of purpose. It's so great that this is available now where you can do this and it's easy and you don't have to feel like you're in a shame because you're trying to get something that actually helps you.
I think that's 100% right, Aaron. And I think that Jim has been a terrific kind of spokesman for the industry in general. He spends a lot of his time on, at conferences when we used to be able to do that kind of thing, but now on,
what's that?
Zoom kind of events and other things. And he talks up the benefits of the industry all the time. And I think he's a great spokesperson in general for the industry. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that we're moving closer and closer and closer toward a place where there is no stigma attached to cannabis anymore. And I think we're not there, to be honest, but I think the amount of progress we've made in the last 5 or 6 years is just staggering to me, and it's great to see.
One question I wanted to ask you, being in the Skokie community, there are a lot of people who keep kosher and they might be interested in edibles. Are any of your products certified kosher, or are any coming online that might be?
The clear answer to that is no. We have not gone through the process. Before we sold the company, we certainly had not gone through the process at Grassroots to have any of our products Heffshire or certified. From the Greenhouse perspective, none of our vendors, Grassroots being one of them, have done that with their products. That said, the great, great, great majority of our products have no ingredients in them that are inherently non-kosher. Depending on the level of observance for people, there are folks who would be okay consuming these products even though they don't have the certifications on them. Do I think that will happen at some point? Yeah, I do think you will find some producers at some point down the line here making some products that do have certifications on them. That process can be a little bit cumbersome sometimes for folks. And I think this industry has been so cumbersome on its own that I think that nobody has wanted to add more complication to that at the moment. But I do think that's likely to come at some point.
Yeah, I think that you'd reach a lot of consumers that way, because just to clarify, I mean, you have this retail store, but your company or Curaleaf produces it's a whole line of product. So it's not just the retail, it's the whole scope of it. And it's all made, is it all made here in Illinois?
Well, again, the regulations in every state we do business and in the entire country today are such that what is produced in a particular state must be sold in a particular state and only sold in a particular state. So everything that you can come into Greenhouse and buy has been produced by one of today 21 particular grow and processing facilities around the state. That number is about to change, which is a great thing. I think at some point we'll get through the process and they will officially issue these new dispensary and new growing and processing licenses here in Illinois, which have a substantial social equity component to them, which I think is sorely needed in the industry and will be a really good thing. But at the moment, there are, I think, 20 buildings that are allowed to grow and produce product in the state of Illinois. And everything you see in every dispensary in Illinois are grown and produced in those buildings.
So it's all locally grown, sustainable. Now you're growing, you're opening up another location further up north in Northbrook, right?
We are.
When is that opening?
Next few weeks. Depends on state approval process because things take time, unfortunately, sometimes. But, I think early October is what we are expecting at this point. The building is basically done and waiting to get final inspection from the state. We're excited about it. We think we have two of the finest pieces of retail real estate for dispensaries, not only in the northern suburbs and not only in the state of Illinois, but really in the country. We think these are two very unique locations, just terrific retail real estate.
Absolutely. They're prime. With the change of retail throughout the country, and especially due to the effects of COVID, this is an industry that can sustain and can hold value within the real estate. So I think that more communities are, for me, from my real estate perspective, I think that it's something that's going to continue to grow and be a valuable tenant if it's not owned by the establishment. So it's a huge value creator.
Yeah, I think, Aaron, one of the interesting things that you're going to see is I think that one of the really unfortunate byproducts of COVID is that every government at every level has budgetary problems today because of COVID. Many of them did before. Unfortunately, we're living in a state that had those issues long before COVID. But every village or city, every state, and even federally, we have massive budget challenges because of COVID. And I think we haven't quite come to grips with how big those budget challenges may be. I don't mean to insinuate that cannabis can solve all those problems because it can't, but it absolutely is one of the real catalysts, in my view, that can help fill some of those budget holes, whether it be locally, statewide, or federally. And I think that will be, again, maybe not the perfect right reason why people should embrace cannabis. I think there's a lot more appropriate, more effective reasons why, but I think the practical reality is this will help gain more acceptance for cannabis around the country and locally as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. By putting it out there and making it prominent, I think it continues to change the perceptions. Now, if somebody wants to go and buy and try the product, are you guys open every day? How should they go about it?
We are open 7 days a week. The easiest way to kind of get a quick introduction before you come, see the menu, get a sense of what it is to hop on the website, which is greenhouseil.com. And I think that'll give you a good introduction. It also shows the hours day by day because the hours are slightly different day to day. But we are open 7 days a week. We have a full staff of folks there to help every person who comes in the door. It is a bit of a daunting process for someone who's not been through it. If you want education before you come, pick up the phone and call the dispensary, and they will help you answer as many of those questions as you can on the phone. And again, depending on people's comfort level in COVID times, if you're comfortable coming in the space fully masked at a 6-foot distance, but one-on-one with one of our staff, and they will help you, walk you through, show you the packaging of each product, explain it, show you, as you said, allow you to go through the process on the iPads in the store. So you'll be able to do your order right there. That will take more than a couple minutes. So if you're uncomfortable with that, you can do some of that same thing over the phone and then pre-order and come on in.
Well, sounds easy. It's a great solution for the stress that people might be feeling right now. So Mitch, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. It's very exciting for the community and quite interesting. So thanks so much.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, Aaron, for having us. And listen, thank you for being interested enough and for embracing both the industry and how exciting it is to have such a kind of unique and interesting building and a unique and interesting business in such a prominent spot in Skokie.
Love it. Love that it's in the SCEV. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of Inside the SCEV. Don't forget to subscribe so you always catch the next episode. Share it with your friends, share it on social media, and enjoy.